writers, the stories that made us who we are.
Well, would you believe it? We're back for season 2. Yes, raised by writers, the stories that make us who we are made it to another lap round the track, and we've got a packed show for you as ever, and as you've come to expect. Imogen Bond is going to be here from the EmpathyLab team. She's going to be telling us about a book from the brand new Read for Empathy collection, which is hot off the press. We're going to have a teacher recommendation from Jade this week. She's going to be telling us all about a book that she remembers from her youth that's really influenced her. Of course, you'll have some recommendations from me, and our special guest this week is the fantastic author Rashmi Sirdeshpande. She's going to be choosing 3 books from her youth that maybe have influenced her own work. Should we get cracking? I very much think we should. But as ever, we kick things off with my own recommendation, something from my own childhood bookshelf, which has stayed with me and has, in some way influenced the work that I've done in time. And I'm going to start the brand new series off, well, with a classic writer, Dick King-Smith. Now, if you are into animal stories, then Dick King-Smith is somebody that you'll know very, very well. Of course, the author of The Sheep Pig, of books like Daggy Dogfoot was one of my favourites as I was growing up. I read a lot of Dick King-Smith as I was growing, but one of the books that was always floating around my house, and one of the few books that I remember sharing with my sister as well. She read it, I read it. We sort of shared this book between us, was Harry's Mad. Now, Harry's Mad was a brilliant tale about a grey African parrot called Madison. And the thing is, he's been left by great Uncle George, who sadly passed away. He's been left to Harry, and Harry doesn't really know what to do with a parrot to start with, but it turns out that Madison is an exceptionally clever parrot. He can play chess, he can chat and talk to you, and all in an American accent, of course. And this is the thing about this book, is that it really encouraged me to not only think about animals as, in that kind of anthropomorphic kind of way that we do, where we think we give them characters, but Madison really does have a fantastic character. It's quite cheeky in places, and there's a nice little bit of kind of like Anglo-American confusion throughout the book as well, but also a great adventure story. It was the perfect book for me as I was growing up, around about 8-9 years old. As I was starting to move on to chapter books, this is the one that really sort of drew me towards things, and I was really pleased that my sister then picked it up a few years later, and it became a bit of a firm family favourite. So if you get the chance, it's still out there in print. It was a puffin book, so it should be readily available to you. Harry's Mad by Dick King-Smith is my recommendation for this week.
I'm delighted to be joined by Imogen Bond from EmpathyLab. And Imogen, I mean, this year's collection is bigger and better than ever, isn't it?
Well, there's 65 books, so it is a big one, but it's 10 years of the collection, so we are really in celebratory mode, because that's so nice. It coincides, our decade of the collection coincides with the National Year of Reading, so there's lots to celebrate. It's a really extraordinary resource. If you can look back across those 10 years, it's over 500 books that we've showcased in that time that really build real life empathy. So we're very proud of it, and it's a good one this time.
It is an absolutely fantastic collection, and we're going to delve into it across the series. Now we've worked really closely with EmpathyLab on the last series to kind of highlight the books from the 2025 collection, but now in 2026. What's your pick? What's your first pick? I mean, because we could have 65 books that we could just talk about. What was your go-to one when I said, okay, if you just had to grab one off the shelf for me now, what can we talk about?
It was very hard, because actually there's loads that I totally love. But the one I've picked is The Donut Club by Christina Rahim. And it's a kind of middle grade novel. And it is about a topic which I didn't know very much about, which is one of the reasons that I had picked it. So Quinn, the central character, and her brother Ollie are born from donor parents. They have a donor sperm. So what was very exciting to me about that was it opened up a whole world that I didn't know about. And I was really interested in the family that they have, which is 2 mums and the donor sperm, and they start to sort of find out a bit more about their identities and the other donor siblings that they newly discover at the start of the book. So it's brand new to me, but I think gives a really brilliant insight into what it might feel like to discover that actually, you know, you don't necessarily know who your dad is, but you've got this brilliant family that have really wanted you, and gone absolutely out of their way to make sure that they could have the family and create the family that they wanted. So I think it's a really interesting book, and it comes from lived experience of the writer. So she is a mum who had a donor in order to have her children. So it gives a kind of completely authentic look into that kind of experience. But Quinn, the central character, is just brilliant as well. So she's kind of really different to the rest of her family, who all love, you know, going surfing and doing like lots of brilliant activities. And she wants to sit and draw and read. And so I kind of identified with Quinn because I'm quite similar to that. And it was really brilliant sort of getting to understand how she does and doesn't feel like she fits into her family.
That must be such a difficult thing to navigate, and about, I suppose, that constant questioning of like, well, do I not like surfing because I'm from a different, came to you in a different way, or I'm looking around and some of my friends like this and some of my other, you know, and we all go through that questioning period ourselves when we're growing up. But when there's that added layer of the makeup of your family, I suppose that's what these books can do. They help us get a glimpse into stories that are not our own, aren't they? They, you know, stories that we haven't lived that experience ourselves. So we need the fiction to be able to drive that understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what's so brilliant about it, because it gives totally a fantastic insight into that particular experience, which, you know, is such a special one and such a fascinating one. And of course, one that is happening more and more with the way that science has and medicine has developed over the last few years. So, you know, it really is possible to have children that way. And so that's really fascinating. But what I think impressed me so much about the story was that I felt really connected to the characters, even though their experience is very different to my own. But that all that conversation and the thought process that Quinn has about, you know, am I like this because of my family, or am I like this because of the way, you know, me as an individual, and trying to sort of find your own way in the world is something that I think we all go through, particularly as young teenagers. So yeah, it's a really brilliant book with a kind of universal way in, but also very particular experience that it describes.
Brilliant. So there you go. That's our first of the new Read for Empathy collection on our shelf. It's The Donut Club. Remind me of the author again?
Christina Rahim.
Christina Rahim. Well, congratulations, Christina. You've made it to the bookshelf.
And it's her debut book. So she's an exciting new writer. So yeah, very good to have her on our collection.
Well, there we go. We look forward in future series to having future books by Christina on here as well. Imogen, always a pleasure to talk to you, and we'll maybe catch up with you again before the end of the series.
Thanks, Paul.
So, my guest today started her career as a lawyer before turning her attention to writing brilliant books for children. She has a host of both fiction and non-fiction titles under her belt and has received huge acclaim for her work. She's been a World Book Day author, has worked with Book Trust as a writer in residence, and to top it all off, she's also an annoyingly lovely person. We've got about 15 minutes to find out if there's something she can't do. I am, of course, talking about the brilliant Rashmi Sirdeshpande. How are you doing, Rashmi?
Hello, thanks for that amazing introduction.
Well, you know, it's actually easy to write the introductions when people have a lot of things that they do, and you are constantly busy, are you not?
Yes, I am, and I like it that way, actually, even though I come to the point of feeling like I'm about to explode with the amount that's going on, but I also love it. I'm not going to lie, I just love it.
There's a certain adrenaline rush, isn't there, from what am I doing this morning to what am I doing this afternoon? Are they completely different projects? Have I got to put a different hat on? I kind of like living that way. Life's there to be lived.
Yes, exactly.
Now, of course, welcome to Raised by Writers. We have a general question we usually ask our guests before we start, which is, when in space and time were the books that you've chosen for us today? When about were you consuming them and devouring them, in either in terms of place or in terms of time?
So in terms of time, we're going back to the 90s, the good
Right.
old 90s, okay? This is when I was growing up and I was spending a lot of time in libraries. Libraries was, they were a big part of my life. For my parents, wherever we went, and we moved a lot every couple of years, we would find our local library. And I was allowed free reign there. There was no judgment. There was no, shouldn't you be reading this? None of that. And so when my peers were reading dense classics, novels, I was reading the kinds of books that I'm going to talk about today.
Yes, and there is. You can tell actually from your without wishing to give too much away, that you were given that free reign in the library, because you have dotted all around the library in different, going in and out of various different sections of the library in order to choose these books. And I mean, our libraries, I mean, we know how important they are socially, but for children in particular, how important was it for you to have that space to be able to go and explore like that?
Oh, it was incredible. We couldn't have had that many books at home. I'm very lucky to have loads of books at home today, but it wouldn't have been possible that the way that we lived. Our lives have changed a lot over the decades. And just to be in a room where there's that much choice is incredible, because there's so much that you don't know. If you are relying on a gatekeeper bringing books into your life, then it's going to be a very limited collection. And I see this so many times today, with children and people, the choices that are presented to them. But the library is one space where you're king. You can walk around and you can actually feel that sense of wonder, because you're looking at all of these shelves that are full of very, very different things you may not even have realized exist as options to read. And then no matter what your interest, no matter how your brain works, no matter what kind of book you're looking for, there will be, if you're given enough time in the right library with a beautifully curated collection, there will be something for you. And this is why I think, it's the National Year of Reading. We're all about kids and getting them reading. But unless they have that choice, it's very, very difficult. And actually, libraries are going to be fundamental to that, because that is one place where you have choice, and these books are free to borrow. I mean, how magical is that, right? A massive stack. So many libraries today, it's like 20 books you can take home for free. That's incredible.
This is the bit that always gets me, is that you go, this costs nothing. This is one of the very few things that we have in life where no expectation is placed on you to part with any cash. You are free to come and go as you please. You can bring it, you can take it for a day, you can take it for a couple of weeks. You can do, there's the rules go out the window when it comes to libraries. It is a very punk kind of place, and it's the best place to be.
It is, and the fact that it's free obviously is incredible in and of itself. But if you think about what that means for children's choice, there's something very special in that, because if a gatekeeper's spending money, they're going to be thinking, what do I want to spend this money on? They're going to be guiding choices a little bit. It's got to feel worthwhile to that person with the money. Whereas when it's a child choosing in a library, yes, said gatekeeper might guide them towards a certain book, but they'll say, okay, but you can choose your own on top of that. So children do have just so much more freedom when it comes to free books being borrowed from a library, I think.
And on those books, let's delve a little bit into Rashmi in the 90s. Live and Kicking was on the telly on a Saturday morning. Zoe Ball was doing her thing, but you were in a library somewhere and you were drawn to the poetry section. Do you want to tell us about your first choice, please, Mrs. Butler?
So I love Please, Mrs. Butler by Alan Alberg. I mean, it's just so real. And for me, I always struggled with sort of dense text. So when my peers are reading novels, like I said, they're reading classics, I was in the library finding things that felt accessible to me. And poetry is something that has always felt accessible. There's not too much on the page. It's broken down. And if you look at something like Please, Mrs. Butler, it's just so real and relatable. It's how we talk. It's not fancy and fluffy. You don't have to deconstruct it to get in there. You're in there immediately because it's kids stuff.
And that title poem as well, I've performed that poem in schools before, and the joy about it is it's written from the teacher's point of view as well as the kids. So you get as much laughter from the adults in the room as you do from the children. And I think that sense of perspective in that poem is really important. You know, the teacher is exasperated with the behaviour of the children. and it's set around the place that all of the kids have got a frame of reference for, isn't it?
Exactly. For so many children, this is just so relatable. Even little things like there's a poem about the only snow. And we've all been there where you're so excited that it's snowing outside and the teacher's like, it's only snow. And there you are. And at the ending of that poem, I just love it. They're all gathered by the window. You know, the teacher sat at her desk putting ticks in a little row while the children stared through steamy glass at the only snow. It's like, it's not only snow, is it? You can feel the joy in that poem.
It's magic. A blanket has fallen from the sky and you want me to concentrate on maths? That's what's going on there.
Wild.
It is. And it's akin as well, I think, to those moments when, you know, any teacher will tell you that if a wasp flies into the classroom, that's it. Learning objectives go out the window.
100%.
Alan Allberg had that trick, didn't he? He could write with the voice of a child and really speak for them, despite the fact that he was writing, you know, well into his, you know, adulthood, and you know, we sadly lost him just last year. But you know, he was writing with that child's voice consistently, and I think that's a real trick for a writer, isn't it? To take on the voice of somebody who is very much your junior.
That's so true. And it is so impressive. And it seems to have stood the test of time. I still see children enjoying these poems. I mean, you've been into schools performing them, so you know the reaction. And I love what you said about how actually his poem, I mean, you mentioned the first one, Please, Mrs. Butler, but quite a few of his poems do this, where they do pull in the adult perspective too, as an adult. And if you've been teaching or you've been in schools, you totally get what he's talking about. But yet it still feels like kid stuff. So he's done that incredible balancing act of doing something that's so relatable to the child, but also to the grown-ups. And that's the sweet spot, I think, because as a writer, if you can do that, if you can make grown-ups and children happy, your book will have longevity.
It most definitely will. And speaking of longevity, your next book, you've done that thing, right, which many of our authors on the pod have done, is they've said, look, I've got a series. Can I talk about the series, please? Because there's a lot to unpack here. And you've got an entire series of puzzle adventures that were published by Osborne. Tell us about those, because they're not ones that I necessarily know, but I know of the kind of book you're talking about. But I would love to find out about this Osborne series.
So I loved the Osborne puzzle adventures. They were the first thing I looked for in the library, any library, at any age, actually. And even today, some libraries still have them. I still look for them because they were that fun and they were special. They were highly illustrated. You've got a whole suite of authors, illustrators, sometimes author illustrators behind these. And I'm talking about the classics again. We're going back to the 90s. They've reissued them. I haven't seen the new ones, but I'd love to have a look. But they had a storyline, but there were things to see and spot and figure out. So you're probably thinking of kind of game books, and I love those too. Choose your own adventures. And I guess this falls within that kind of category where it feels like a game, it feels like play, but it was highly illustrated. And I mentioned how I struggled with dense text. For me, a book that's highly illustrated was perfect for how my brain worked, because my eyes dart across the page. And if, when you dart across the page, you see dense text, that's like a wall of text that's just, that's hard to process. But if your eyes dart across the page and you find really hilarious pictures, and it was hilarious art, you know, and they had brilliant titles as well. They had things, you know, things like the Intergalactic Bus Journey, the Escape from Blood Castle, I think it was, you know, Danger at Demon's Cove, Journey to the Lost Temple, Search for the Sunken City. I mean, it was all very hooky.
It's kind of like that somebody worked out that you know, that whole kind of tradition of Famous Five, Secret Seven, etc. Right, but actually you can put you into the center of the story, and you can make decisions, and you can solve these puzzles. There's something lovely and interactive, and that kind of draws kids into that. And it's interesting as well. You were saying earlier around that kind of making your own decisions within the library. You're making your own decisions within a book in this case.
Yes.
Aren't you?
That's so true. There's so much agency that's left with you as a reader. I love that. I love that there was so much art. I loved that there was something for you to do, that kept you engaged, and I loved those hooky themes. You were exploring different worlds with every single book. You might be traveling into space or into ancient Egypt or into kind of a sort of an archaeological site. So no matter what you were interested in, if you like sort of heart-pounding books, there'd be a haunted house to explore. So there was, again, it was just something for everyone. And also something for every mood, because sometimes as the same reader, you feel like picking up a completely different story. It just depends on the vibe for the day. And the Osborne Puzzle Adventures provided for all of it.
And I mean, we'll get onto this, the kind of big question about the influence on your work later on. But I'm immediately drawn to some of your non-fiction titles. You know, How to Be Extraordinary, How to Change the World. You know, some of the books about being the boss, and that, you know, those non-fiction titles you've got. They aren't plain text. They are highly illustrated. There are changes in fonts. There are things to engage the eye as well as the reader. How much influence did you have when you were writing your books on being able to say, no, this is visually what I would like the thing to look like?
It's really interesting because I think I've sort of rolled through my writing career without thinking too much consciously, but subconsciously, absolutely. When Puffin came to me and asked if I'd like to work on a very, very, very highly illustrated book, How to Be Extraordinary, I loved the idea. When Annabelle Tempest did a sort of mock-up spread with my text in, it was exactly the kind of thing I would have loved as a child, and even today. So I think subconsciously I've always been drawn to that format where there's something pulled out, there's a quote, there's something to sort of cast your eye on. Wherever your eye falls, something should be there for you. And if you don't want to read from start to finish, you want to just zoom straight in on the bits that pull you in, great. I'm your writer. I'll create that kind of book for you so you never feel like you're missing something because you haven't gone cover to cover. Because I think some books you should absolutely be able to dip in and out of. I think we have to have that option for readers if we really want reading to feel accessible.
And it comes back to the poetry that you were mentioning before. You can pick up Mrs. Butler, start at page 74, and it still makes absolute perfect sense because you are in that particular moment in that particular poem. It is something you can dart in and out of, pick up, put down, you know, sit and read for an afternoon or sit and read for 5 minutes. It's and now look, the last section of books that we're looking at is the DK series. Now Dawn and Kinnesley have been kings for years of being able to create that, as you said, visual, almost encyclopedic books, but in a way that somehow don't feel like you're picking up an encyclopedia and randomly looking through for facts, and yet you can look around them. And you've got the eyewitness books in particular. What is it about these ones, that particular group of books that you were drawn to?
So I think these were the first DK books that I came across, and I remember them standing out in the library because you had books on a wide range of topics, from ancient Egypt to space, dinosaurs, and then over the years we've seen DK add a really truly rich collection of nonfiction titles on everything under the sun, which, I mean, I love writing fiction, but I also love writing and reading nonfiction because of the variety there. There is something for everyone. And this was my first exposure to that world, really, in the 90s, in libraries, and looking at that nonfiction section, these very visual books on any topic. You could pick that up and you could pick up a book and you could dive in, dip in and out, zoom straight to the bits that are pulling you, calling you in, and then you could leave it, you know. And sometimes you would get lost in a book, and before you know it, you're flicking the pages and actually you are reading page after page. But it didn't matter if actually all you were doing was reading a section, putting that back and finding the next one. Again, that freedom, that agency, the invitation to read without any obligation was so beautiful. But I just remember thinking, there is so much I want to know about this world. And that's an incredible feeling.
It's and they have even now. I bought my son. He's very much a cinema buff, and I bought him the DK cinema guide, the big
Yes.
tome, which is I would say is very much for an adult audience. It's exactly the same layout as those books that we were reading as children. And yeah, actually, he picked it up and went, "This is amazing!" And he was flicking through, and the quality of the images chosen, and the layout, and the chapter breakdowns into different things. It's something that can continue all the way through. I think it just very much depends whether you're into dinosaurs or whether you're into something really heavy like the history of cinema. It works as a concept, doesn't it, across a variety of age groups?
It really does. And these books are so well researched. As you say, they include the most wonderful pictures. They have access to so much, DK. They'll pay for whatever licenses they need to show photographs of real artifacts, which I know as a writer, you can't always include all of those things in your books. It might be, because you need the rights to certain things, but DK managed to obtain all of that. They have great big teams who verify books. So what you're reading is really well researched, great material. And as you say, accessible to all ages, because you have the children's books and you have books that go all the way, are dedicated to grown-ups, but actually anyone can read if you're super interested in a theme.
Most definitely. And now, look, just bringing all of these together, you've got the puzzle adventures, the poetry, and the DK books you've chosen. This is the $1 million question: is do you see the through line? Do you see that? I picked up books when I was a child, and now at some point or another, I took a minor diversion via the law, and then I came back and found my true calling to be a children's writer. And actually, I can see that route and where it's come. Do you look back and you go, you know what? It was inevitable I was going to write these books because this is where I started.
Oh, 100%. If I think about loving that variety, being curious about the world, and all of that stuff that I put in my books, it's all about being curious at the world, wondering at it. It's me. It's my way of saying, oh my goodness, you've got to see this. And normally I'd tell a friend, and now I get to put it in a book and it travels the world, which that blows my mind when I think about it. So I actually try not to think about it too much, because that's wild, isn't it? That right
now somebody's reading one of your books in Nuneaton and you didn't even know about it.
Unbelievable. I mean, wild, beyond my wildest dreams. But this is the thing. So definitely a child who grew up with that choice and that agency and no judgments around reading, as that child, of course, I've grown up into a writer who thinks about the readers who need books to feel accessible in this way, who need books to be highly illustrated, books that invite you to read, but with no obligation to read cover to cover. Many of my books are like that. So yeah, I think it was inevitable. I am inevitable.
I am inevitable.
Said that.
No, we're into now we're into the Marvel universe, and this is dangerous territory for me as well. Now, looking forward to the future. I mean, this is we always focus on the past, but what is coming in 2026? Of course, it is National Year of Reading, but you are busy as ever. I've managed to catch you in between projects. What can you tell us about what's coming this year for you?
So what I can tell you is that in February 2026, I'll be launching my debut middle grade series, Harry Kumar Ultimate Superstar, which is a doodle diary, highly illustrated by Mamta Singh. It's funny. It's got a cheeky, neurodivergent South Asian lead. He's got big feelings and even bigger Bollywood dreams. So that's going to be super fun. And then in April, I have a picture book called Superuma coming with a debut picture book illustrator, Nakul P. And that is actually about sensory overload, but it's also a play on comicsy superhero tropes. And it's just a really funny story. And then I have the paperback version of This Is Who I Am, illustrated by Ruchi Masani. And that is a poetic picture book and a sort of a celebration of identity and belonging, and also an immigrant story. My story, actually, the story of my parents. So that's a very personal one. 3 very, very different things, and 1 secret thing coming later this year as well.
And just to top it all off, because I was about to say, we've got this one, and this one, and this one.
I know, it's a lot of different things, but they do all fit together because they're all so joyous and very accessible. Like Harry Kumar is short and funny. The text is very readable, Marty doesn't talk down to kids. So the bookseller had said something like that it would be great for readers 7+, but all the way up to the end of primary, because it just, it's kid stuff.
I honestly, I would do away with all age gradings, quite frankly.
I know.
What it does is it immediately opens up for adults who I think are some of the people that should be reading this golden generation of children's writers that we're in. Because if I was an adult now looking to understand children, read the children's books where the characters are living the lives of the people you're trying to understand. And
Yes.
I genuinely, whether it's a picture book that's aimed at 2 to 3 year olds, or whether it's a young adult novel, there are so many different opportunities for adults to be reading children's books, and I'm all for that. So whatever
Yes.
you this year,
Preach.
I will have it. I will have it on this bookshelf right next to me, and I guarantee I'll be shouting about it online as well. Rashmi, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you as ever. Your choices of Please Mrs. Butler, the Osborne Puzzle Adventures, and the DK Eyewitness books are making it to the brand new bookshelf for season 2 of our new podcast. So thank you very much for gracing it and populating it so widely.
Thank you very much for such a lovely chat and for having me on.
Like so many that came before, Rashmi has chosen a series of books rather than just the 3. It's great, I think, that there's so many choices when we think back to what we were reading when we were kids, and sometimes whole series are needed to be put up there on the bookshelf. And I think as it's a virtual bookshelf, I think it will definitely cope under the strain, so I'm going to allow it. Brilliant choices from Rashmi there, and of course we still have our teacher recommendation to come as well, and that is where I hand over to Jade.
Hi everyone, I'm Jade, also known as Miss Marley. I'm a languages teacher at Tottington High School, and Paul's asked me to get in touch to talk to you about a book that was important to me as a child. The book that I've chosen is a story called Mouse Soup. It's really important to me because in the depths of it, it's about courage and challenging, and it's about the importance of stories themselves. On the outside of it, it's a silly story about a mouse who's getting himself out of trouble. But I absolutely love the story. The illustrations are absolutely fantastic, and they've stuck with me so visually in my head for such a long time. But really importantly, it's stuck with me because I remember it being read to me by 2 people who I loved most in this world, my mum and dad. They both loved reading that story, and that's really stuck with me. And now I like to read this story to my own little boy. Hopefully he will have the same memories of it growing up. But yeah, have a look. Research Mouse Soup. It's absolutely brilliant. And you can see some of the illustrations for yourselves online. They are absolutely phenomenal. Thank you, Paul.
No, thank you, Jade. What an amazing choice for the first episode of the new series, Mouse Soup. And so we come to the end of our first episode. It's a delight to be back. We'll have new episodes for you every week. Just as a quick reminder of the books we've talked about today, my choice was Harry's Mad by Dick King-Smith. And then Imogen from EmpathyLab chose The Donut Club by Christina Rahim. That's in the brand new Read for Empathy collection. You go to empathylab.uk if you want to check out that new collection. Then, of course, our special guest this week, Rashmi Sirdeshpande. She chose Please Mrs. Butler by Alan Allberg, the Osborne Adventure series, and the Dorling Kindersley Eyewitness books to go onto our virtual bookshelf. And then just at the end there, Jade choosing Mouse Soup by Arnold Lebel. What a great selection for our children's bookshelf this week. We'll be back with you very, very soon. We've got children's poet Dominic Berry, aka Dommy B, is going to be with us. And in the meantime, go and check out all the socials. It's at Teacher Writer PJ on Insta, and we will see you very, very soon.
If you'd like more information on today's podcast, you can contact Paul Jenkins on social media using the handle at Teacher Writer PJ. Raised by Writers is a Double Rainbow production.